No, I'm not playing a game. I'm making your damn video. Okay, looks like I'm currently live. Hello, my name is Michael Pierce, and today we're going to be learning about macros in Roll20. So, this recent event involving a well-known disease named after one of my favorite beers has forced us to practice social distancing when it comes to playing role-playing games. Now, I'm a big fan of the Roll20 service. You don't have to pay for it in order to use it. And if you have an artistic thumb, you don't have to purchase anything either. However, let me tell you, I was not a good host for yesterday's Saturday game, and I'm hoping that a brief tutorial series might help with making things easier. And because I'm recording this live on Facebook, anyone else is welcome to take a look in and take away what they can. I mean, if they want to participate in tabletop role playing over the internet, stop on by. There's also great resources by a YouTuber named Taking20. His name is Cody. He's from Texas. And he goes in depth on how to use various virtual tabletops like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. So, as you can see here, we have a game board set up, and I have this massive token made of the kind of coding side of making dice rolls. And there's also other options for people to roll dice as well. Like I just rolled a 12-sided die, as you can see in the lower populated part of the screen. Now, rolling dice is great. However, many times I've noticed that players who are either longtime veterans that haven't gotten back into the game for a while, or new players that find themselves intimidated by a massive book like the Player's Handbook, sometimes can get rules a little mixed up. So that's why the Roll20 macro system was put in place. It's so you can remember that rule once, and then with a push of a button, you never have to remember it again because the computer will remember for you, do that math, and tell everyone the result. Does your archer hit its target? Can your spell really envelop the enemy? That sort of thing. So if you follow my mouse key here, I mean, I know I have the whole Google Chrome screen available, but I am moving my mouse over a number of icons in the upper right-hand side of the screen. And all of these have different functions. Like right now I'm playing as a dungeon master, so I have an art library available to me at the moment. But that's getting ahead of myself to another thing. The big thing here is to scroll over to this icon called Collection. And my mother and I like to joke that it looks like an icon of a bunch of people in bunk beds. So first you navigate there and you left click to access it. And at the very top of the window within that tab is something called macros. These are going to be the method that you'll use to create intuitive buttons for your use. You get to customize these any way you'd like. So as you can see, I have a bunch of them already set up here. I have one for Bardic Inspiration. I have a couple of different dice rolls set up. And I have a couple of different icons set up for a character of mine, including one called Mike Rolls Up a Character that's for rolling stats. We're going to make one right now. So to make a new one, you go to this button here called Add. And you're going to get treated to this massive window called Edit Macro. And you'll have a couple of boxes that you can fill in spaces for. So you could name this like, I don't know, let's pretend we're making a fighter. Hand axe attack. All right, so you named what the button is going to be. And then after that, I like to follow it up with a bit of narrative flourish. Okay, so the warrior raises his axe and brings it down with the intent to do harm. Okay, that's great. But now we need to define what we're doing. So we have to go to the next line and tell the computer what is happening mathematically. Now that's why I have this Roll20 tutorial tab open at the same time to show what's happening here. So you have to kind of remember two things. You have to remember how the game does it and how to say it in Roll20 speak. So in the game, what you do is you take a 20-sided die, roll it, and then add modifiers to it to increase its value. So in Dungeons and Dragons, you roll your die 20. So how do you say that in the program? You go slash roll space. How many dice? We're rolling one die. And then you follow that number with the D for dice. What kind of die? Is it a 6-sided, an 8-sided, a 12? For the attack roll, we roll a 1d20. Now, for modifiers, let's say this character is level 3. A level 3 character gets +2 to proficiency. So you type that out with no spaces, +2. The axe uses strength to determine how effective it is at finding its target. Let's make this a really strong fighter. He has an 18 strength. So that gives him a +4 modifier to hit with an axe. So then we follow that up with +4. And then you hit enter to go to the next line. Congratulations. You now have a singular dice roll that shows us exactly what's happening when your warrior uses his axe against the enemy. Now, that's only to determine if he hits. Let's go down another line and describe what the hit is. You know, D&D likes to determine what kind of damage you're throwing out there. Is it fire damage? Well, in this case, today it's slashing damage. That's good for the human DM that's running the game going, oh, okay, it's slashing damage. So maybe the target has a vulnerability to slashing and you get to double the damage against it. But let's roll the dice normally. We go to the next line by hitting enter. And now we tell the computer what we're rolling when we're hurting the enemy. So slash roll. For this particular axe, I'm going to go with one dice, D for dice, 8, an 8-sided dice. Now, when you're rolling damage, the only thing you're adding is your ability score modifier. So it took strength to hit the target. Now it's going to take strength again to hurt the target. So we use the same ability modifier from strength. So I gave this warrior an 18 in strength. So that's +4 for the ability modifier. Now we're pretty much done here. You have an option to test this macro, or you have an option to save changes. For right now, I'm going to save changes, and we go back over to the list of macros, and we find it again. It automatically puts it in alphabetical order. So right now it's underneath another macro I made called Gwen's Longbow Advantage. Now, go ahead and go over to in bar, which is right next to its name, just across the way at the edge of the screen to the right. Click in bar. You'll notice that it popped up in my screen just beneath my name in Roll20. Now that's interesting, right? We now have this new button that we have invented for ourselves. Now, we should be done with hanging out in the Collections tab. Let's go back over to the Chat tab. And this is where this button is going to show itself as how handy it can or cannot be. So let's go back to Chat. We have a bunch of dice rolling going on here. Let's go back over to the hand axe attack. and let's push the button and see what happens. Keep your eyes on the chat window as I press it. 3, 2, 1, press. Okay, so it includes my flourishing for narrative purposes. The warrior raises his axe and brings it down with the intent to do harm. We see that we're rolling 1d20 plus 2 for the proficiency and plus 4 for the strength. The dice roll today rolled an 8, and we added 6 to the result for a total of 14. Now, for you D&D players out there, you know that that was a below average accurate hit. But for many enemies that you face in the lower tiers of Dungeons & Dragons, a 14 is more than adequate at hitting your target. So if you did hit, you can also report what your damage was. Now, what's fun about this chat window is everyone else sees this roll too. So we know that we rolled a 5 with our die 8, added 4 naturally from our strength, and we ended up with 9 damage. So from this point on, if you're a new player, all you have to do is when you're asked to use a hand axe to attack someone, you just click the button and it tells you exactly what you rolled. Now this next one was extremely accurate, but did very little damage. So it rolled a 24 to hit, huzzah! But we rolled the minimum damage output, so he only did 5 that time. And we can press this as many times as we like after we've made the button for ourselves. So let's go back and make another macro. We navigate over to the Collections tab, which looks like a bunch of people in bunk beds. We click the bunk beds and we look at macros and we want to add a new macro. So we click Add. So the last one I called Hand Axe Attack. This one I'm going to call Crossbow Attack, because our warrior has to have long range options as well, right? So we add some flourish text first. The warrior cocks his crossbow with the intent to bullseye his enemy. It's a bit of a typo there. Let's go ahead and bulls. Yeah, slash I. Yeah. My apologies. This is a live broadcast, and my mother is now yelling at dogs. All right. She's very much injured at the moment, and the dogs always take over her spot when she leaves because it's nice and warm. All right, so we did our flourishing of text. Next, we do what we did before. We go to the next line, and we define the attack roll. So we have to say /roll, put a space in between that. What dice are we using? For D&D, the attack dice is always going to be 1, D for dice, 1 type of dice, 20-sided die, and we add the modifiers to the attack. In Dungeons & Dragons, you add your proficiency. This guy's level 3, so his proficiency is 2. And then the ability score modifier. So for a crossbow, it requires dexterity for accuracy. This warrior is not very accurate, so I'm actually going to give him a penalty. He only has an 8 dexterity, so we say -1. After we do that, I like to go to the next line after that and define what type of damage it is, right? So in this case, it's piercing damage. And then we go to the next line by hitting enter, and now we define what the damage is. So for Roll20, we have to go / type out the word roll, space. For a crossbow, a light one, that's typically 1 type of dice, D, 8-sided, 1 8-sided dice, and then we add the ability score modifier. Now for dexterity, I gave this warrior a heavy penalty. He has an 18 strength, but only an 8 in dexterity. And he has to apply a penalty, -1. Okay, so we have that. And like before, we're going to save changes. And as you can see, it populated in my list of macros that I have made. Now we're going to again click in bar and keep your eyes on the lower left corner of the page. As you can see, I now have a crossbow attack button that populated immediately upon me clicking in bar. Now let's test it out to see how it works. Go back over to the icons in the upper right hand side, navigate your mouse over to the chat window. And now we're going to go and move our mouse over the new button we've made called crossbow attack and press it. Now, sometimes you might get distracted. There might be a line that divides things. That happens sometimes. However, this macro still worked as intended. The warrior cocks his crossbow with the intent to bullseye his enemy. And it tells us what we're rolling. We rolled 1 die 20, added our proficiency, but we took a penalty to dexterity this time. We rolled a 9, added 2, but also took away 1 for the result of 10. Most of the time in the early stages of D&D, a 10 is likely to be a miss. But let's pretend it hit. We then go down to the piercing damage to see what we rolled. In this case, we rolled somewhat low. We rolled 1 die 8 for the damage and took away 1 from the result. We rolled a 2, we subtracted 1. Our fumbling warrior only inflicted 1 point of damage this time. And what's great about this is now you, again, never have to remember the specifics of the roll again. You know, the next time your DM says, make a roll to attack with your crossbow, you can go, oh yeah, I have that macro made as a form of a button, and I can press that immediately, and we can have the results without any question or any guidance. The computer will roll it for us. Now, sometimes it takes a while. As you can see, Roll20 has become rather popular again as we go into this fiasco of hiding out in our homes. Just give it some time, it will roll its dice, and as you can see, it did it again. We again only rolled a 9, so we again got stuck with a 10 for accuracy. But, you know, maybe the warrior was shooting at a rock, and he rolled a bit better this time for damage. So he rolled a 4 on his 8-sided die, but with his -1 penalty, he inflicted 3 points of damage. Well, I hope this has been enlightening as to how you can use Roll20 to make your gaming life a bit easier if you're using physical character sheets or character sheets that are on a different platform other than Roll20. I will be back for more as the week progresses. So thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.